いてるその卑しい仕込めを。
に何か言ったら殺す。
My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1 begins with a dream sequence, where Miyo witnesses a foreboding moment with Kiyoka Kudo. As the warmth of the spring changes to the barren fall, Miyo's life turns melancholic. On a snowy night, Kiyoka apologizes to Miyo and mentions how much he loves him. The nightmare wakes up Miyo in a cold sweat, and she begins to wonder about its implications. Following that, the narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1 shows Miyo describing the dream to Arata Yusaba and Kiyoka Kudo. She wonders whether something has happened, but Kiyoka and Arata assure her that nothing dangerous has transpired. Kiyoka also admonishes Arata for not filling them, he and Miyo, about the dream sight ability. Arata doesn't mind Kiyoka's hurt that much. Rather, assures Miyo that he will support her until her powers fully awaken. Likewise, Kiyoka feels his fiancé will eventually find out the meaning behind her dreams one day if she keeps working hard. In a monologue, Miyo Samori says she has never thought about comprehending her dreams. However, she knows that she's the only one in the world with the dream sight ability. Following the opening sequence, My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1 switches to the town, where Hazuki, Miyo and Kiyoka are seen returning from shopping. Miyo, who has bought a nice dress, thanks Hazuki for accompanying her. Just then, she gets an intense feeling that someone is watching her. The cold sensation almost overwhelms her before someone touches her from behind. Miyo quickly turns around and notices a familiar-looking person. The elderly person happens to be Kikuo Kudo's father, Takahito Kudo. Miyo Samori's meek and gentle behavior pleases Takahito. He holds her hands as if approving of her as his would-be daughter-in-law. Kiyoka is slightly embarrassed by his father's act. He asks why he has arrived. Takahito Kudo then says he has come to invite them both, Kiyoka and Miyo, to the Kudo family's villa. The narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1 then switches to a well-furnished cafe, where Takahito sips a cup of tea and mentions how much he wanted to see Miyo earlier. However, Kiyoka didn't allow him to. Meanwhile, Kiyoka Kudo says they won't go to the villa. Takahito doesn't say anything but rather asks Kiyoka for a favor. He hands him a note, which says that strange grotesquerie incidents have been occurring near the Kudo family's neighborhood. As such, the anti-grotesquerie unit will be called in. Yet Takahito wants his son to investigate since something about the case is bothering him. Kiyoka would have refused his father's request if it wasn't for a letter from Prince Takahito, appointing him to take the same case. Both Kiyoka and Hazuki know their father has perhaps pulled the strings from behind, even though he has been retired from the military a long time back. Meanwhile, Miyo wonders whether it'll be fine for her to accompany his fiancé. However, Kiyoka reminds her that it's better to go than wait for him at their home. The narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1 skips to Miyo and Kiyoka catching a train to the latter's ancestral villa. Seeing the girl tensed, Kiyoka assures her that she can relax. However, it's not that easy since Miyo hasn't stepped outside her home much. After reaching their destination, Miyo and Kiyoka are greeted by the Kudo family's caretaker and butler, Sasaki. He welcomes the duo and takes them to the villa via a car. Meanwhile, a short flashback reveals the nature of the grotesquerie incidents. According to My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1, Kiyoka has been sent on a mission to investigate the sighting of a demon, a special type of grotesquerie, and similar grotesqueries near the imperial border. Additionally, the letter says a suspicious person has been seen in the area. Thus, Kiyoka wants to investigate and see whether such a report is related to the grotesquerie case. Meanwhile, Kiyoka Kudo's homecoming doesn't go pleasant because his mother, Fuyu Kudo, brutally berates Miyo. She wonders whether Miyo is Kiyoka's scruffy attendant. Fuyu Kudo's harsh words toward Miyo infuriate Kiyoka, and his rampant emotions bring thunder outside the villa.
においてるその卑しい仕込めを。
He also mentions how he never considered Fuyu as his mother. Meanwhile, Miyo doesn't know what she should do as she clutches onto her fiancé's hand. Fuyu then lashes at Miyo, asking her whether she thinks a lowly abandoned girl can marry the Kudo family's head. Kiyoka Kudo becomes even more furious and is ready to demonstrate his powers. However, his father intervenes and uses his supernatural ability to prevent a battle from brewing. Takahito reminds Kiyoka and Fuyu that they have a guest.
イオに何か言ったら殺す。
After going upstairs, Kiyoka apologizes to Miyo on behalf of her mother. He knows what type of person she is. Having said that, he's glad to know that Miyo is fine. The narrative moves to Kiyoka Kudo and Miyo Samori taking a walk through the villa's neighborhood. The former mentions how happy Prince Takahito was to hear that they are visiting the place together. He also mentioned how the journey will be a necessary one for Kiyoka and his fiancée. After walking for a while, the duo enters a shop. Miyo Samori is delighted to see handcrafted wooden decorative items, known as classic souvenirs from the place. Seeing Miyo in a thrilled mood, Kiyoka tells her to buy as many as she wants. Meanwhile, the shopkeeper urges Kiyoka to be careful on his way home, since there are disturbing rumors going around the neighborhood about the sighting of a demon. Moreover, a suspicious outsider has been going in and out from the rundown mansion on the village's outskirts. While returning home, Kiyoka and Miyo watch the sunset together in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1. The former apologizes to Miyo once again because of her mother's harsh words. However, the girl says although she can't change the past, she wants to get along with Fuyu Kudo. As such, she wants her would-be husband to watch over her. Kiyoka smiles and tells Miyo to do whatever she wants. After returning home, the duo enters their room. Miyo Samori is embarrassed to see there's only one bed, so she exits the room to ask someone to prepare another bed. Kiyoka doesn't quite understand why Miyo appeared such flustered.
お布団が一つしかないわ。心の準備が。やっぱり別のお布団をご用意してもらいます。
Following that, the narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 1 switches to Prince Takahito's mansion, where they inform Erita that the Yusuba family's future isn't steady. A threat looms large over the imperial city by someone with Yusuba blood. Although they don't know the nature of the threat, Takahito's revelation ability has told them that only Miyo, the Maiden of Dream Sight, and Erita can prevent the calamity. Thus, Takahito entrusts the future to Erita. After that, Prince Takahito assigns Erita on a mission.
の仕事をしてもらうわ。
お掃除します。やらせてください。
Episode 2 extends Miyo Samori and Kiyoka Kudo facing their respective ordeals head-on. Although Miyo realized that Kiyoka's mother disapproved of her as the better half of the Kudo household's heir, she earnestly devoted herself to getting along with her. Miyo wanted to win Fuyu Kudo's heart since she knew that her fiancé, Kiyoka, needed her. Likewise, Kiyoka Kudo immersed himself in investigating the strange case regarding the demon-shaped grotesquerie sightings. Even though Kiyoka was aware of his mother and Miyo's situation, he had full faith in his fiancée that she would handle the situation perfectly well. Rightly so, My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 2 saw Miyo Samori keep a calm front when Kiyoka's mother ordered her to work as a servant at the Kudo household. She wanted to see whether Miyo had the resolve. Fuyu expected Miyo to give up and run away. However, when the girl surpassed her expectations and embraced her orders, she became even more irritated.
お庭のお掃除をお願いいたします。
はい。
Miyo Samori's earnest work won over the Kudo family's caretakers and maids, who apologized to her later because they had initially thought that being a girl from a respected family, she wouldn't be able to do an adequate job. On the other hand, Kiyoka's father, Takahito Kudo, deeply apologized to Miyo for his wife's rash behavior. Miyo Samori already began to have an influence on others. She lit up the household, something that Fuyu Kudo didn't expect. She couldn't believe a meager-looking girl, she used the phrase in the episode, would do well to become the wife of the Kudo family's heir. Although she knew deep inside that her son, Kiyoka, needed Miyo and that she was the perfect bride for her son, Fuyu still couldn't bring herself to accept the girl. Fuyu Kudo's refusal to accept Miyo partly stemmed from the strong exterior she built throughout the time she spent in the Kudo household, as Takahito stated toward the end. She perhaps thought Miyo was too soft-hearted for her son. That's why she always made insulting remarks to Miyo without showing any remorse. However, Miyo Samori listened to Fuyu's harsh words without even reacting.
に座れ。が暖かいだろう。
It was only possible because she knew that Kiyoka Kudo watched over her. Miyo's strongest support, Kiyoka, was always behind her back, and it lent her the strength to push on. Although Kiyoka Kudo was busy with the investigation, he was aware of everything. That's why, even though Miyo Samori's ordeal was chiefly hers, Kiyoka Kudo had a deep share in it too. Aside from the major focus on Miyo Samori and Fuyu Kudo's narrative, the episode showcased Kiyoka Kudo grappling with the case he was assigned to. Episode 2, Kiyoka Kudo wanted to get to the bottom of the grotesquerie case in his neighborhood. Notably, Kiyoka Kudo discovered the location of the run-down mansion from one of his neighbors and went inside. He witnessed several vials and other research items, as well as an unusual crest symbol. Kiyoka Kudo realized it was the same symbol he and his team at the Special Anti-Grotesquerie Unit had been trying to figure out. Just then, a mysterious man confronted Kiyoka and demonstrated a special power to self-destruct. Before dying, the man mentioned that the founder had blessed him with such power. Additionally, My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 2 implied that the order named Gifted Communion could be behind the whole case. However, on a deeper inspection, it would seem that the case would bring Miyo and Kiyoka together, just as the familial troubles have brought the duo closer. Although neither Miyo nor Kiyoka explicitly disclosed their respective ordeals in the episode, their narratives eventually co-align at the end of the episode, when Miyo decided to use her dream sight powers on a man to save him. Miyo Samori was prepared to die if it meant helping her husband. However, she was stopped midway by Arata Yusaba, who appeared at the Kudo household in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 2's end.
かけられて。
かけられます。
ミオ、やめなさい。
ブラッドさん。旦那様の唇が。
Episode 3 begins with Arata Yusaba reprimanding Miyo Samori for erratically using her powers without anyone's supervision. Meanwhile, Fuyu Kudo demands an answer from Arata regarding his identity and why he barged into their home without permission. Arata sincerely apologizes for his unannounced visit and formally introduces himself. Fuyu is slightly shocked to learn that Arata, a Yusaba blood, is Miyo's cousin. On the other hand, Miyo tells Arata about the man's plight and how he will die if they don't do anything. Arata Yusaba acknowledges Miyo's gesture but reminds her she shouldn't recklessly demonstrate her powers. That said, he also thinks they need Miyo's powers to save the man. Yet, since Miyo can't use her abilities to their fullest, Arata wants to stand by her side and watch over her. Assured, Miyo then dives into the man's consciousness. Elsewhere in My Happy Marriage, Kiyoka Kudo heads to the village's outskirts to find the demon. Along the way, he meets a few villagers who inform him about the demon's sightings at the rundown mansion. As Kiyoka reaches the mansion, he encounters a suspicious man in a cloak, who tells him about the Gifted Communion's goal. The Gifted Communion desires to give powers to those without supernatural abilities to eradicate the pervading inequality in the land. The suspicious man reveals how their order has liberated many people with their blessings. Since only a select few share the knowledge of supernatural abilities and the grotesqueries in the distorted world, they assume omnipotent control over others. Following the vision of the founder Naoshi Yujui, the Gifted Communion wants to create a truly equal world. Through informing Kiyoka about their clan's goal, the suspicious man invites Kiyoka to join their cause. When Kiyoka Kudo refuses, the gift user summons a giant demon which emerges from the ruined mansion. Besides the demon, two cloaked individuals appear alongside it. Just then, Takahito Kudo joins the fray. Although Kiyoka asks his father to leave everything to him, Takahito wants to battle. He takes on the cloaked individuals while Kiyoka fights the giant fiend. Takahito Kudo demonstrates his impressive combat prowess, combined with his skillful display of ice-based supernatural abilities, to incapacitate the enemies. Likewise, Kiyoka Kudo unleashes a powerful fire-type attack to defeat the demon. While inspecting the demon, Kiyoka and Takahito discover the creature turning into a human. The man is wearing a vial containing blood with ominous energy. Kiyoka Kudo wonders whether the man turned into a demon by indigesting the blood. The narrative for My Happy shifts to Miyo Samori, who enters Koda's subconscious mind to help him. She notices the man sitting helplessly, with a protruding horn on his head. As Miyo holds the man, the horn seemingly disappears. However, a demonic hand suddenly begins to plunge the man into eternal darkness. Miyo becomes helpless as she doesn't know what to do. However, her resolve to save the man illuminates the dream world as the demonic hand disappears. After saving the man in the dream world, Miyo returns to her senses. With tears, Koda's mother expresses her gratitude to Miyo for saving her daughter. Just then, in My Happy Marriage, Kiyoka Kudo returns to the Kudo household, and he's glad to see that his fiancée is doing fine. Following that, Kiyoka notices Arata and asks him his reason for the visit. Arata says Prince Takahito has personally asked him to visit the Kudo mansion to investigate a suspicious organization near the vicinity. Kiyoka Kudo then informs Arata about the gifted communion, including the vial he found and the order's founder's name, Naoshi Yusaba. As soon as he hears Naoshi's name, Arata's face turns pale. According to My Happy Marriage season, Naoshi Yujui shares the same Yusaba blood as Arata and Miyo. In other words, he's from the branch family. Night, Arata informs Kiyoka and Miyo that Naoshi Yusaba was born into the Yujui family, Yusaba's branch family. One day, he disappeared from the face of the earth. Arata adds that Yujui has Yusaba's supernatural ability, and he was Miyo's mother, Sumi Samori's prospective fiancé. However, after Sumi was married off to the Samori, he broke ties with the Yusaba family and left. Arata fears that if Naoshi leads the gifted communion, the root of all the related crimes lies in the Yusaba family. At any rate, he decides to report the matter to Prince Takahito. After Arata leaves, Miyo Samori realizes the incident regarding Naoshi Yujui matters to her since she has the Yusaba blood in her veins. Kiyoka, who understands how much Miyo is going through, tells her not to worry. He promises to do what she can't and leave what she should to her. Kiyoka wants to live with Miyo, where they help and cover for each other. He thinks they can manage anything as a married couple that way. Miyo then asks Kiyoka whether she's giving him adequate support as his fiancé. Kiyoka smiles and tells Miyo she has already become someone without whom he could not live a long time ago. Kiyoka Kudo's kind words brighten Miyo's. Under the moonlit night, Kiyoka and Miyo share their first proper kiss. The moment brings the duo closer, as Miyo forgets to blink seeing her lover's bright moonlit smile. Miyo promises to cherish the moment, which feels like an eternity. The next day, Miyo Samori recalls her first kiss with Kiyoka Kudo while she packs her clothes to return to the Imperial City. Just then, in My Happy Marriage, Kudo enters Miyo's room. Kiyoka's mother finally has a change of heart as she acknowledges Miyo's spirit to act on her fiancé's behalf to save a man's life. Even though she still calls her ugly, unmannered, and other derogatory terms, Kudo finally acknowledges Miyo as her son's would-be bride. In the hallway, she tells Kiyoka to teach Miyo not to be so timid the next time she visits. Kiyoka's face brightens up, realizing that his mother has approved of Miyo. Elsewhere, Yoshito Godo and others from the Special Anti-Grotesquerie Unit gather near a house, hoping to find some members of the Gifted Communion. However, as they enter the house, they find no one except the Order's flag. Suddenly, the house's door closes automatically, and a magic circle appears under Yoshito's feet. Meanwhile, Arata, Kiyoka, and Miyo are at the station. Kiyoka plans to head off to the military station, while Arata will send Miyo home and report his findings to Prince Takahito. Just then, Miyo Samori, Kiyoka Kudo, and Arata Yusaba's senses become dull as a man approaches them. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 3 ends with Naoshi Yujui's arrival, as he addresses Miyo as his daughter.
Miyo, 僕の娘
Kiyoka Kudo, Miyo Samori, and Arata Yusaba's unsettling encounter with Naoshi Yujui, the Gifted Communion's founder. Kiyoka urges Miyo to stand back, while Arata points his gun at the man. Naoshi tells them not to get violent as he has only arrived to greet them. Suddenly, he disappears from Arata's view and appears behind Miyo. Naoshi addresses Miyo as his daughter and says he will find her again. Meanwhile, Kiyoka uses his supernatural ability at Naoshi. Yet, moments after that, he realizes there's nobody there. Meanwhile, Miyo Samori wonders why Naoshi Yujui addressed her as his daughter. The narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 4 then switches to the Special Anti-Grotesquerie Unit's headquarters, where Kiyoka learns about Yoshito Goto's operation at the Gifted Communion's base. Yoshito and his group have sustained heavy injuries due to a trap. As such, Yoshito will be out of action for 2 months. To cover his absence, Karakoko Januchi, a female officer from the old capital, has joined the team. Karakoko says she looks forward to the job. On the other hand, Kiyoka Kudo reads a report about the man he encountered at the rundown mansion. He learns that the man belongs to the Hojo clan. Kiyoka is surprised at how the man could slip through the ministry's surveillance to assist the Gifted Communion. In fact, there's no evidence of a security breach. What's more, no one in the ministry suspected the Hojo member to be missing. Kiyoka surmises that they must be dealing with someone with the power to interfere with one's heart and mind. Just then in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 4, Miyo Samori enters the office accompanied by Arata Yusaba. The squad leaders are slightly anxious to see the 2 members of the Yusaba family, fearing what would happen if they interfere with their psyche. Meanwhile, Kiyoka Kudo asks Arata about Naoshi Yujui's powers. Naoshi Yujui can interfere with 5 senses, i.e. sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. In other words, he can control how one's brain receives information. Arata further says how Naoshi can easily infiltrate the headquarters without anyone noticing if he desired it. Although it's an unnerving ability, Arata knows there must be a weakness. Given its immense power, it can take a heavy toll on Naoshi's body. At the same time, he speculates that there must be a range to his ability. At any rate, the unit considers Naoshi a potential threat. Besides, they know that the Gifted Communion wants to create an equal world where everyone is endowed with supernatural abilities. Kiyoka Kudo speculates that Naoshi Yujui might come after Miyo Samori, considering she has the Dream Sight ability, which can be the key to his vision. Hence, Kiyoka has asked Miyo Samori to come to the quarters from the next day for her protection. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 4 then shows Kiyoka Kudo assigning Karakoko Januchi as Miyo Samori's bodyguard. He urges her to look after Miyo since she could be in danger. Karakoko Januchi takes a liking to Miyo Samori, who's of the same age as her. Since she has been assigned as her bodyguard, Karakoko wants to get along with Miyo and become friends. She even shows her around the quarters, including the kitchen, the commissary, and the dojo. Karakoko saves the dojo as the final stop of the tour since it's her favorite place. She explains to Miyo that her family runs a dojo. Ever since she was a child, Karakoko spent a lot of time training with them. That's why she finds it relaxing at the dojo. Following that, squad leader Mukadiyama greets Miyo. He asks Karakoko to spar with a new recruit and takes care of Miyo for the time being. As Karakoko spars with a boy, Mukadiyama tells Miyo how women are always looked at as a liability in the barracks. That's why Karakoko Januchi, despite her amazing talents, hasn't had a steady promotion. In fact, she was only able to join because of her ability, since it's rare to find a soldier with special abilities. Karakoko Januchi's resilience amazes Miyo Samori, who wonders whether she can also overcome her challenges like her. Meanwhile, Karakoko easily defeats the new recruit, who is disgusted at himself for losing to a woman. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 4 then switches to Arata Yusaba at the Yusaba's villa, who goes through some documents. Yoshiro Yusaba asks him whether it's about Naoshi Yujui. Arata tells Yoshiro that even though Prince Takahito has asked him to reform the Yusaba's ways as the new head, he doesn't know much about the Yusabas. He asks Yoshiro whether he knows anything about Naoshi Yujui. Naoshi was a problematic child who enjoyed suffering animals, insects, and even his classmates. However, when Sumi, Miyo's mother, reached out to him, he slowly began to change his ways. Naoshi was almost like a bodyguard to Sumi and adored her very much. The narrative then switches to Kiyoka's house, where Miyo Samori asks whether he would like her not to prepare lunchboxes anymore. Since Miyo has seen the commissary, where fresh food is served for the officials, she wonders whether Kiyoka would even like her homemade food. However, Kiyoka says he would love it if Miyo continued providing her with the lunchboxes if it didn't bother her. Miyo Samori is glad to hear Kiyoka's request. The narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 4 then momentarily shifts to a conversation Kiyoka had with his father, Takahito Kudo. He requests his father to take care of Miyo if something happens to him. Takahito is pleasantly surprised to see how much his son loves his fiancée. Following that, the narrative switches to a dream sequence, where Miyo Samori witnesses a moment between her mother and Naoshi Yujui in their childhood. As soon as she wakes up, Miyo wonders why she had that dream. She is irritated by the fact that she still cannot comprehend her dreams. Although Miyo knows how powerful her dream sight ability is, she laments that she still doesn't know how it works. The next morning, Miyo Samori goes to the quarters kitchen to clean it up. Interestingly, Karakoko Janucci lends her a hand. Elsewhere in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 4, Kazushi Tatsuishi visits Yoshito Goto at the hospital. Yoshito learns about the new officer who has joined the squad in his absence.
内薫子が工藤さんの元婚約者候補だってこと。
Samori diligently cleaning the barracks. Just then, she overhears a few soldiers speaking ill of Karakoko, whom they consider inferior due to gender bias. One of the soldiers, who lost to Karakoko in Kendo, harbors a tremendous angst. Even though he knows he cannot win against her, his male pride overpowers his senses. Miyo normally doesn't say much, but she stands up for her friend. She defends Karakoko by asking the soldiers whether it's a lie that their unit operates based on merit, and that women can participate if deemed worthy. A soldier comes forward and rudely talks to Miyo. He tells her how a woman doesn't have the stamina or physical prowess to fight alongside them. Miyo quietly snaps at the soldier, telling him to best Karakoko Janucci in a match before claiming she has no skills. Overwhelmed with shame, the soldier is about to raise his hands at Miyo. Karakoko Janucci intervenes. She tactfully handles the situation to ensure there's no ill scene created. Although Karakoko displays a composed front, Miyo can understand how she truly feels. As such, she invites her to a secret tea party to cheer her up. Karakoko tries some buns and becomes shocked when she discovers that Miyo has made them. She realizes that there's truly nothing that Miyo cannot do. Miyo's generosity and kindness fill Karakoko with happiness, as she heartily smiles. Following that, the narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 5 switches to Miyo and Kiyoka entering an infirmary to visit the injured Yoshito Goto. The hallway, they meet Jaikuji Unanimous, who happens to be Kiyoka Kudo's material relative, a proficient physician and healer. With a friendly personality, Jaikuji introduces himself to Miyo and holds her hands. He observes Miyo's charred hands and realizes she must be working hard at the barracks. As Jaikuji leaves for an urgent call from the ministry, Miyo looks at her hands and realizes the wounds are healed. After that, the duo enters the room where Yoshito is in. Yet, as soon as Kiyoka Kudo notices the bandages on his subordinate's body, he feels slightly off. Kiyoka then makes an excuse to leave the room. Miyo wonders what's wrong with her husband-to-be. Interestingly, Yoshito says he might know the reason behind Kiyoka's sudden change in behavior. According to Yoshito, his father used to be the commander of the Special Anti-Grotesquerie Unit. During that time, Yoshito's father was a close subordinate to Kiyoka's father, Takahito Kudo. He was the first to recognize Kiyoka's supernatural talents and persuaded him to enlist in the unit. Yoshito's father believed that those with power have a duty to improve the world using what they have been given. However, Kiyoka refused to join the unit since he never asked for such power. Year after year, Yoshito's father's abilities weakened. Had he found someone as his successor, he would have happily retired. Yet he pushed on to stick to his ideals. Eventually, one day, he died while carrying out a mission. Yoshito's father's death had deeply shocked Kiyoka Kudo, who was guilt-ridden. From that point, he took up the then-commander's blade and followed his advice to perform duty as the one who had been given power. Yoshito thinks seeing him in bandages must have refreshed Kiyoka's memories. Miyo then apologizes to Yoshito she feels she shouldn't have asked him such a question. However, Yoshito says she should always ask Kiyoka questions. Suddenly, he mentions something about Karakoko Januchi but stops midway. Tatsuishi, who is beside him, says if he's truly concerned about Miyo, he should give her respect by saying it directly. This moment, Tatsuishi reveals an unexpected secret about Karakoko Januchi, was a former marriage candidate for Kiyoka Kudo. The truth shocks Miyo, who doesn't know how to respond. Meanwhile, Karakoko overhears their conversation from outside. She is about to enter the room but stops. Instead, she turns around and runs off. Karakoko thinks her friendship with Miyo was never going to work. Miyo and Kiyoka, returning from the infirmary. Miyo recalls Yoshito telling her about Karakoko's truth. Meanwhile, Kiyoka Kudo apologizes to Miyo for suddenly leaving. He mentions how he wielded the blade after Yoshito's father's passing. Since then, he has been determined to demonstrate his powers for the world's betterment. Miyo, however, still ponders about Karakoko. Eventually, she asks Kiyoka about her. She wonders whether they were in love. When Kiyoka asks Miyo why she thinks it's so, she says it's because Karakoko is a kind person. Kiyoka then firmly holds Miyo's shoulders and assures her that there has been nothing between them. Miyo is the only fiancé Kiyoka has ever accepted. As for Karakoko, he only looks at her as a talented subordinate and nothing else. Kiyoka then apologizes to Miyo for worrying her and not telling her about it before. While resting, Miyo Samori confronts a haunting vision where a glass breaks out of nowhere. Interestingly, the glass shards reflect the worried faces of Karakoko, Mukadayama, and others. Besides them, one of the glass shards reflects No Shiyujui's face. As Miyo tries to reach out for it, the shard injures her hand. This moment, she wakes up in a cold sweat and wonders what the dream was all about. The next morning, Miyo enters the kitchenette and finds Karakoko there. As she begins to prepare some tea for her, Karakoko says she's not qualified to be eating with Miyo. She mentions how she overheard Yoshito telling Miyo about her being a marriage candidate for Kiyoka. Miyo feels she should have still come in. However, Karakoko couldn't do it. According to My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 5, Karakoko Januchi truly loved Kiyoka Kudo. However, it was only a one-sided love as she never told him about her feelings. That's why, when she was assigned to the Imperial City again, Karakoko was miserable. Returning to a place with a man she once loved and with people who don't approve of her was a cruel experience until she met Miyo. Karakoko tells Miyo how her kindness endowed her with the strength to push on. Even though she was apprehensive at first, she quickly became friends with her. Even then, somewhere in her heart, Karakoko has feelings about Kiyoka that she cannot get rid of. That's why she doesn't want to betray Miyo since her own feelings are unsettled, then switches to Miyo, who listens to Karakoko's emotional outburst. She gently says that she would hate it if Karakoko made Kiyoka the sole reason that their friendship cannot continue. Miyo reaches out to Karakoko and holds her hand. She says she would hate it if they could not be friends anymore. In fact, Miyo doesn't think romantic love is of higher value than friendship. Hence, she wants to stay friends with Karakoko, her first ever female friend. Miyo Samori's kind words send Karakoko Januchi to tears. Following that, the narrative switches to Arata Yusaba, who is on his way to the Emperor's house. Suddenly, a vehicle hurriedly goes past him. Arata notices Emperor inside the vehicle with some other people. Interestingly, the guards at the mansion are all perplexed. Arata realizes that No Shiyujui has abducted the Emperor. He reports it to Kiyoka's unit, who decides to move out with his team. Kiyoka asks Karakoko to protect Miyo. Interestingly, everything falls according to Naoshi Yujui's plan. He easily infiltrates the barracks and enters the room Miyo is in. Even though Mukadiyama, Karakoko Januchi, and other soldiers surround Miyo, Naoshi poses a major threat.
隊長が裏切ったとでも言いたいのか。
もうありがとう。陣内薫子さん。
Picking up the events from the previous episode, My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 6 begins with Arata Yusaba investigating the imperial family's villa. Kiyoka Kudo and his unit arrive at the scene and ask Arata about the situation. Arata Yusaba says His Majesty should be there. However, he's convinced that Naoshi Yujui is involved in the case. Yet, since Naoshi hasn't made contact, they wonder whether they have been led into a trap like Yoshido Goto and others. Kiyoka Kudo senses something is wrong. Suddenly, the Special Anti-Grotesquerie Unit's general arrives at the scene and tells Kiyoka about Prince Takahito's latest revelation, according to which Miyo is in danger. The narrative shifts to the dojo, where Naoshi Yujui chuckles to see such a warm welcome. According to the episode, he intends to take Miyo with him. Meanwhile, Mukadiyama wonders how Naoshi could breach the barrier since it shouldn't be easily broken. While asking him that question, Mukadiyama tries to slip through a paper crane bird as a message for Kiyoka. However, the crane burns as it contacts the dojo's inner wall. Mukadiyama realizes that Naoshi Yujui has tampered with the barrier and trapped them inside. Meanwhile, Naoshi tries to confuse the soldiers with cunning questions. He asks them who let him breach the barrier if it wasn't Kiyoka Kudo. This moment shockingly reveals that it's Karakoko Januchi, who tampered with the barrier to let Naoshi in. According to the episode, Karakoko was forced to follow Naoshi's orders since he captured her father and brutally tortured him. However, one of her subordinates reveals it can't be true since he practiced with the general a few days ago. Suddenly, Karakoko Januchi gets a perplexing thought. She wonders if it was all an illusion, and this thought begins to haunt her. Yet, Naoshi revels at this. He asks Januchi if her memory is truly reliable. Naoshi Yujui extends his hands toward Miyo and asks to go with him. Once again, Naoshi calls himself Miyo's father. Meanwhile, Mukadiyama draws his blade to take down Naoshi. Suddenly, he observes how strangely his subordinates are reacting. The soldiers begin to attack each other as a result of Naoshi Yujui controlling their senses. Some of them begin to see strange grotesqueries instead of their subordinates, while others see the gifted communion's members. At any rate, Naoshi Yujui's gift shatters everyone's senses. Meanwhile, Mukadiyama charges toward Naoshi. Suddenly, his vision transports him to the edge of a cliff. As she momentarily stops, Naoshi plunges a knife into his torso. He reminds the soldier that on the battlefield, a moment of hesitation can cost one's life. After leaving Mukadiyama incapacitated, Naoshi approaches Miyo. This moment, Karakoko Januchi raises her sword against the intruder. Then showcases Karakoko Januchi demonstrating her impressive sword skills against Naoshi. Even though she uses her gift to boost her physical performance, Karakoko poses no threat to Naoshi Yujui. While lying on the ground, Mukadiyama realizes that Naoshi is literally playing with someone as skilled as Karakoko. Eventually, Naoshi grabs Karakoko's arm and slams her against the dojo's window. As the glass shards fall upon the impact, Miyo Samori realizes it's the same vision from her dreams. She regrets not telling Kiyoka about her dream and wonders why she cannot comprehend her dreams. At the same time, Miyo realizes Naoshi would want her, the only dream site user, to the gifted communion. Although Naoshi asks Miyo to join him, she maintains her stance. She also tells Naoshi that he already has a father. Since Miyo doesn't listen to his words, Naoshi reaches for her. Just then, Kiyoka Kudo arrives at the scene and demonstrates his lightning-based ability to stop Naoshi. Naoshi Yujui remains composed and warns Kiyoka Kudo that it's only the beginning. After this, he uses his ability to heighten everyone's senses. Once Kiyoka regains his composure, he realizes that Naoshi Yujui has escaped. At any rate, he approaches Miyo and asks if she's fine. The next day, while investigating the imperial family's villa, Arata Yusuba overhears some soldiers bad-mouthing him and the Yusuba family. They speculate that Arata must have lied about the emperor's kidnapping as one of Yujui's followers. Later, the general tells Arata that the prejudice around the Yusuba family won't disappear in a single day. Meanwhile, Arata Yusuba wants the general's permission to continue the search on his own. As Arata enters the villa, X delves into a flashback, showcasing his childhood memories. According to the flashback scenes, Arata has always had a lonely life since he wasn't allowed to make any friends. Since it's the Yusuba's duty to weed out the evil gift users, they aren't permitted to befriend other ability users. Moreover, Arata's grandfather firmly believed that Arata had the potential to become the future heir of the Yusuba family. That's why he was asked to work hard and wait for the time when a dream sight user is born. Arata was tasked to become that person's sword. Yet, at present, Arata realizes that nothing has ever happened the way his grandfather predicted. In other words, what Arata truly wants to protect is nowhere to be. Just no Shiyujui appears at the scene. He tells Arata that he understands his situation. That's why he extends his hands and invites him to the gifted communion. Elsewhere, Mukadayama bows his head and apologizes to Miyo for belittling her. He realizes that Miyo truly is a brave person. At the same time, he plans to work on making the organization fully merit-based. When Miyo asks Mukadayama about Karakoko, he says that she is bound to receive severe punishment. However, since she was forced to do what she did, and that she's an invaluable member of the squad, Mukadayama will request a reduction of her punishment. Meanwhile, New Year's Eve approaches. Kiyoka's older sister, Hazuki, hosts a small lunch get-together with Kiyoka, Miyo, Yuri, and Yoshido. Even Arata Yusuba is invited. After the party, Miyo Samori notices Karakoko Januchi outside her house. Karakoko tells Miyo that she will return to the old capital once the investigations are done. That's why she has come to say her farewell. She adds how Kiyoka has negotiated with the top brasses to let her go. At the same time, Karakoko mentions how Mukadayama has requested to shorten her punishment. She realizes with bittersweet emotions that she's truly blessed even though she has betrayed everyone. Karakoko thinks she doesn't deserve to be Miyo's friend. That's why she wants to make up for what she has done, and hopes Miyo will be there for her when she returns. Miyo Samori hugging Karakoko Januchi. She hopes that she's good enough for her, which fills Karakoko's heart with warmth. Just then it begins to snow. The episode ends with some cryptic words from Prince Takahito, suggesting a painful road ahead for Miyo. Picking up the events from the previous episode, My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 7 begins with a serene scene, featuring Miyo Samori and Kiyoka Kudo watching the snow falling outside the mansion on New Year's Eve. Kiyoka acknowledges how happy the year has been since he met Miyo. The girl feels the same and they share a kiss on the lips. Elsewhere, Prince Takahito summons Masashi Uketo and the Lord Keeper, Takakura. Takahito instructs Masashi to forge ahead with their plans and keep the Emperor's disappearance under wraps for the time being. He also senses a terrible calamity approaching. This moment, Takakura asks Prince Takahito what he has seen in his latest vision. While Uketo snaps at Takakura, Takahito says it's Fing. He realizes that Takakura must have seen through his current ambivalent mindset. Takakura speculates that Takahito's heart must have been unsettled due to the sacrifice they might have to make in the future. Takahito doesn't say anything to Takakura's response but only smiles. Following the opening scene, My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 7 switches Kiyoka Kudo and Miyo Samori on their way to visit the Hatsumode on New Year's Day. While Kiyoka stays rather quiet, Miyo's mind races once she recalls the last night's kiss. A flurry of emotions grasps Miyo's mind as she wonders whether she's indecent to be thinking too much about the kiss. At the same time, she wonders if such experiences are normal for Kiyoka. Eventually, she brushes off her thoughts and asks Kiyoka whether it's safe for them to spend their time freely. Kiyoka says they can since Prince Takahito has assured them that nothing will happen. The visit to Hatsumode fills Miyo with a tremendous sense of joy since she has never experienced such visits before. During an exchange with Kiyoka, Miyo reveals how she used to spend her New Year's Day with the servants. In other words, she never stepped outside the mansion when she lived with the Samoris. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 7 then shows the duo visiting the shrine. Miyo prays to God that she wants to be with Kiyoka forever. Yet, at the same time, she's scared. While returning from the shrine, Kiyoka asks Miyo what she was so fervently wishing for. Every year, Kiyoka prays for the imperial capital's peace. This year, Kiyoka has added another wish. He wants to be with Miyo forever. Kiyoka's words overwhelm Miyo's heart. After leaving the shrine, Miyo and Kiyoka explore the bustling streets. Suddenly, they notice a commotion. A few members of the Gifted Communion perform in the crowd, showcasing a grotesquerie that's visible to everyone, including Miyo. Kiyoka Kudo suspects the Order must have created a technique to make this possible. The Gifted Communion's members claim that unlike the government, who conceal the grotesquerie's existence, they have the power to eradicate them using gifts. In fact, they are willing to share their powers with everyone. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 7 then shows the cult members demonstrating their powers to kill the grotesquerie. As the crowd stands perplexed by the sight, Yoshido Godo and his unit appear at the scene. They apprehend the cult members and take them away. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 7 then reveals how Kiyoka sent a message to Yoshido to inform the team about the commotion. Kiyoka suspects that demonstrations like the one they witnessed are happening everywhere. He fears the outcome if the Gifted Communion continues to expand its influence over the normal folk. Kiyoka then gives Miyo a shikigami for self-defense. That night, Takahito urgently summons Kiyoka to the headquarters and asks whether he has heard about Takahito's plans. Masashi Kato thinks it's inevitable that the Gifted Communion will come for Takahito and Miyo. At the same time, he's concerned about the cult's growing influence. Kato observes how the cult is getting daily coverage in newspapers, with some criticizing the government. In addition, he mentions how Prince Takahito has had the latest premonition. He urges Kiyoka to stay on his toes for the time being. The narrative switches the perspective to Miyo Samori, who confronts another vision from her mother, Sumi, and Naoshi Ujui's past memories. Suddenly, she notices Naoshi staring at her in her dreams. Miyo then wakes up in a cold sweat and wonders about the meaning behind her dream. While heading for the Imperial Castle, Miyo Samori tells Kiyoka Kudo about her latest dream. She cannot fathom how someone can directly stare at her in her dreams. Miyo laments that there are many aspects to her powers she's yet to realize. Meanwhile, Kiyoka drives the carriage to the castle. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 7 showcases the luxurious castle, where Kiyoka and Miyo will stay together for a while. According to the episode, Takahito has ordered the unit to protect him and Miyo from Naoshi Ujui. As Miyo enters the castle, she sees Yuri and Hazuki, who will stay with her. Aside from them, Miyo meets Arata Yusaba, who is assigned as her bodyguard. Kiyoka Kudo urges Miyo never to go outside the castle, while she can go anywhere inside the premises. Shortly after that, Miyo tells Arata about the latest dream. She wants Arata to teach her everything to know about the dream sight ability. Arata Yusaba feels Miyo has something restricting her from awakening the dream sight power's actual potential. Following that, Episode 7 switches the focus to Kiyoka, who enters Miyo's room. Seeing Miyo lost in thoughts, he asks her if something is bothering her. Miyo tells Kiyoka about what Arata has said. Kiyoka Kudo then urges Miyo to open up more. He feels Miyo tends to hide her emotions. Therefore, unraveling those emotions could help her tap into her actual potential. Kiyoka then asks Miyo how she feels about him. However, before Miyo can process Kiyoka's words, he leaves the scene embarrassed. After that, Episode 7 shows Kiyoka Kudo meeting Yoshido for a quick meeting. Apparently, Karakoko Janucci is also attending the crucial meeting via call. They discuss how Karakoko's memories and her father's whereabouts don't quite match up. Kiyoka Kudo feels there must be a second traitor working amongst them. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 7 ends on a foreboding note, with Arata Yusaba lost in thoughts while guarding. Episode 8 of My Happy Marriage Season 2 begins with Kiyoka speaking with Masashi. Kiyoka and Masashi discuss the Imperial Council's activities and how they're monitoring Kiyoka, Kiyoka's unit, and Takahito. Meanwhile, Takahito, Takakura, and several councilmen hold a meeting. In a flashback, Takakura tells Takahito that he will track down an alleged traitor. Takahito says it'll be challenging and argues that opposing him wouldn't make the person a traitor. He tells Takakura that Yujui will stop by soon. Takahito tells Takakura he's the only one that he can count on. In the present, Takakura examines the various ministers while they discuss Mikado's kidnapping incident. One of the ministers suggests they all unite under Takahito. Takahito tells everyone that he understands their concerns. However, Takahito argues they should focus on strengthening their defenses at the Imperial Palace. Miyo visits Hazuki in her room. Yuri and Takahito are present. They hold a fun ladies' soiree event inside. Hazuki uses her special ability on the mirror. Janucci appears in the mirror. Hazuki says Janucci will participate in the soiree from her location. The girls play board games, drink beverages, and discuss their romantic interests. Hazuki teases Janucci about her possible interest in Yoshito. Janucci says she views Yoshito as her senior and wants to stay away from love. Hazuki shares life advice with Miyo and Janucci regarding her divorce. She tells Miyo and Janucci that it's important for anyone to express their love and create an unbreakable bond with the person they're in love with. Janucci tells Miyo that she's rooting for her and Kiyoka. She falls asleep and bids farewell to Hazuki and Miyo. Later, Miyo and Takahito chat outside while Hazuki rests at the table. Takahito rambles about his abilities and how those who can see the future, like himself, must combat loneliness. He warns Miyo about something that may happen soon. Miyo and Kiyoka meet somewhere at sunset. She tells Kiyoka not to catch a cold. Kiyoka departs and Miyo walks off with Arata somewhere. Arata learns Miyo's worried about Kiyoka. He tells Miyo that one's emotions can dictate their power's strength levels. Arata is certain Miyo's emotions will become her fuel. He tells Miyo that he will assist her with anything troubling her. Then, the Minister of Education, Hazeb, arrives with his secretary. Hazeb tells Arata that his secretary got lost, so he wanted to ask someone for directions. Arata suggests they turn around and go home. Hazeb tells Arata he knows about the Yusaba's special powers. He tries bribing Arata with money to use his powers. Arata gets physical with Hazeb and demands he leave. Takakura arrives with his men and he tells Hazeb to leave. Hazeb enters his vehicle and his secretary apologizes to Takakura and the others. Then, Hazeb's secretary whispers into Arata's ear, thanking him for his hard work. Hazeb and his secretary depart. Later, Kiyoka and Miyo head to their room. Kiyoka and Miyo realize there's one bed on the floor. Left with no choice, the two rest in the bed together. Kiyoka discusses Miyo's experiences at the Imperial Palace to calm her nerves. Then, Kiyoka tells Miyo his job isn't too difficult. However, Kiyoka regrets seeing his colleagues fall in battle. Miyo tells Kiyoka that she doesn't regret becoming his fiancé. Kiyoka and Miyo discuss love and the former tells Miyo that he wants to fall deeply in love with her. Kiyoka tries to kiss Miyo but Miyo refuses. He tells Miyo that he'll be waiting. The episode ends with the two falling asleep. Episode 9 of My Happy Marriage Season 2 begins with Yoshito and the other anti-grotesquerie unit members fighting a grotesquerie. Yoshito defeats the grotesquerie and suggests they bring it to the quack doctor. Meanwhile, a group of unit members discuss a recent leak. One of the members suggests they remain vigilant, but another member argues they have nothing to fear. After this member enters a room, another member reveals he's in cahoots with the gifted communion. This member kills the same member who warned the member who entered the room. Later, Yoshito and Kiyoka visit the quack doctor. Quack doctor performs a ritual on the grotesquerie that Yoshito defeated. He pulls out an orb from the grotesquerie's body. Quack doctor claims this orb's barrier is why supernatural abilities don't work on grotesqueries. Then, Kazushi arrives and plans to dispel the orb. Meanwhile, Miyo finds herself in front of the Saimori house. Viewers can assume she's using her dream sight powers. Next, Yujui heads to Sumi's room while she's holding baby Miyo. Yujui tells Sumi that he created an organization to change the world. He wants to bring Sumi with him. Sumi refuses. She tells Yujui that marrying into the Saimoris prevented the Yusubas from entering a crisis. Sumi tells Yujui that Miyo makes her happy. She tells Yujui to find something to cherish and to live a new life with the Yusuba family. Miyo views their situation from afar. She realizes Sumi walked away from Yujui and wanted him to be happy. Yujui laughs and chats with Miyo. He learns that Miyo entered his dream with her dream sight powers. Yujui tells Miyo that he cherishes Sumi and nothing else comes close to him. He tells Miyo he regrets not saving Sumi and argues he'd kill every Saimori to accomplish that. Yujui tells Miyo he wants the world to be run by those with Yusuba family abilities. Yujui destroys everything. He wants to offer his world to Miyo. Miyo refuses. Yujui tells Miyo that she is capable of controlling people's minds. He argues that Miyo will desire that power soon. Yujui tells Miyo he will kill Kiyoka. Miyo awakens and looks outside. She notices it's snowing and remembers Takahito's warning. Miyo roams the area and arrives near the entrance gate. Hazuki and Yuri meet up with Miyo. Miyo tells the girls that Kiyoka is in danger. Miyo and the girls hear behind the gate. A man opens the gate, and Miyo and her friends learn he harmed the guards. The man uses his powers to harm Hazuki. Hazuki tells Yuri to seek help and begs Miyo to leave the area. She tells Miyo that she'll use her powers to stall for time. Miyo departs. The man defeats Hazuki and stops Miyo. He eats one of the spheres Kazushi is currently working on. The man transforms into a grotesquerie. Meanwhile, Kiyoka, Yoshito, and the quack doctor observe Kazushi's activities. Kazushi destroys the sphere, and 4 grotesquerie claws appear. Quack doctor infers that materializing a part of a grotesquerie allows people to be possessed by a demon. Kazushi confirms he can dispel everything now that he knows how this sphere works. Meanwhile, Yuri and a guard visit Hazuki's location. Hazuki sends an origami bird to Kiyoka. She hopes Kiyoka will protect Miyo. The grotesquerie grabs Miyo. Yujui speaks with Miyo using his powers. He wants Miyo to cry for help. Yujui hopes Kiyoka will rush to Miyo's aid. Miyo refuses and uses her powers to send the grotesquerie and herself into the dream sight realm. Meanwhile, the soldier who entered the room earlier gets shot. Yujui chats with the minister. The minister tells Yujui to remain hidden. He argues that if word gets out about his allegiance with Yujui, it'll ruin the minister's path to becoming the prime minister. The minister departs, and one of Yujui's men appears. He tells Yujui that the entire military facility is under their control. The underling confirms that Mikado has been taken care of. Yujui tells his underling that he wants to kill Mikado. Meanwhile, Miyo and the grotesquerie sink into the floor. In the real world, Kiyoka saves Miyo from the grotesquerie. Kiyoka defeats the grotesquerie with Kazushi's help. Then, someone fires 2 gunshots at Kiyoka. Kiyoka falls to the ground. Erida appears behind Kiyoka and reveals he shot Kiyoka with his pistol. He updates Miyo and Kiyoka on Mikado's situation. Erita reveals that he and the others received orders to detain Kiyoka. He argues he's doing this for the Yusuba family and Miyo. 2 guards tie up Kiyoka's arms. Kiyoka tells Miyo he loves her, and the 2 men drag Kiyoka away. Miyo cries. The episode ends with a shot of Kiyoka's shikigami on the ground. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10 begins with a mysterious boy emerging from a magic circle. The boy strangely resembles Kiyoka Kudo's child version. Following the foreboding opening scene, the narrative shifts to the mansion, where Miyo Samori finally regains consciousness after the stressful event. Yuri, who has been watching over Miyo for a while, asks the girl how she's feeling. Suddenly, Miyo remembers about Kiyoka Kudo's fate. She gets up from her bed and asks Yuri about her fiancé with concerned eyes. This moment, Hazuki enters the room. Seeing Miyo fine, she promptly hugs her. Miyo Samori apologizes to Hazuki since she thinks that she could have prevented the incident. However, Hazuki urges Miyo to stay calm. Even though Kiyoka has been taken away by the gifted communion, Hazuki has full faith in her brother's safety. Meanwhile, Lord Takakura thinks Kiyoka Kudo must be at the headquarters. However, according to My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10, the gifted communion members have captured the headquarters and the garrisons. As a result, they have taken control of the chain of command by force. The Special Anti-Grotesquerie Unit attempted to follow Kudo, but the fierce battle with the gifted communion members left them scattered. Thankfully, the Navy, who was on another assignment, wasn't attached. Therefore, Prince Takahito promptly summoned them to chase out the intruders. Takakura tells Miyo that they are currently focusing on strengthening the palace's security. When Miyo asks him about Prince Takahito, Takakura says he's fine. However, since Kudo is Takahito's sworn friend, he's deeply distressed about the situation. Meanwhile, Yuri and Hazuki urge Miyo to rest. Elsewhere, in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10, Hojo commends Arata since the gifted communion wouldn't have been able to capture the anti-grotesquerie unit without his assistance. However, Arata Yuseba says that he has done everything to ensure Miyo gets to the top of the world. Hojo then apologizes to Arata for misjudging him at first. Meanwhile, at the palace, Miyo Samori doesn't want to put anyone in danger anymore. Rather, she aims to take the matter into her own hands. As such, she tries to sneak out of the palace to go and rescue Kiyoka on her own. As she's about to leave the palace, the young boy from the opening scene stops her. He calls Miyo's plan awful. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10 then switches the perspective to the young boy, who introduces himself as Kiyoka Kudo's Shikigami. Apparently, his job is to protect Miyo. The Shikigami, whose name is Kiyo, tells Miyo that the situation isn't as simple as she thinks. That's why he thinks it's wise for Miyo to go to the Yusaba's mansion once. With Lord Takakura's help, Miyo Samori reaches the Yusaba mansion. Elsewhere in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10, one of the gifted communion members asks Naoshi Yujui what to do with Kiyoka Kudo. Naoshi reveals that he intends to use Kiyoka as a catalyst to awaken Miyo's abilities. The narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10 shifts to Miyo Samori, who goes to her grandfather Yoshiro. She asks her grandfather if he can guide her to awaken her powers. However, Yoshiro says that he doesn't want his granddaughter to follow the same path as Naoshi or Arata. He thinks having strength alone won't be able to fix the situation. During their conversation, Miyo asks Yoshiro what happened with the Yusabas. This moment, My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10 reveals the haunting truth about Naoshi Yujui's past. According to Yoshiro, the Yujuis were part of a remote branch of the Yusaba. In his childhood, Naoshi Yujui lived in a farm village near the countryside. However, a certain incident compelled the main family, i.e. the Yusaba family, to take him under their custody. It is said that the Yusaba cannot use their powers on those without abilities. However, when a couple of burglars killed Naoshi's biological parents, the boy used his powers to kill them. It was becoming increasingly difficult to contain Naoshi's sadistic tendencies. Therefore, the elders decided to seal Naoshi's powers. However, Miyo Samori's mother, Sumi, was able to bring a change to Naoshi's personality. Thus, the elders let Naoshi have his powers. Eventually, they thought Naoshi and Sumi would get engaged and lead the Yusaba into the future. However, through the Emperor's swift interference, the Tsurugi trading declined. That moment, the Samori family assured the Yusabas of financial assistance if they handed over Sumi as a prospective bride. Interestingly, Sumi accepted it to save his family. However, Naoshi Yujui strongly opposed the decision. He fell into deep despair and eventually disappeared one day. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10 then returns to the present and focuses on Miyo. She tells Yoshito about Naoshi's aim to awaken her powers. She wonders whether it's related to her mother. She also wants to know what it means to awaken her powers. This moment, Yoshito hands over a sacred book to Miyo, which has passed through generations of Yusaba. The book is called the Tome of Dream Sight. Miyo reads the book and discovers that one has to awaken the dream sight powers through one's own feelings and desires. In other words, external aid cannot awaken such a power. That night, Miyo Samori dreams another memory concerning her mother and Naoshi Yujui. Yet before that, Miyo confronts her mother, who apologizes to her for letting her carry a heavy burden. She touches her head and a bright spark illuminates the screen. The dream sequence shifts to Sumi's memory, where she urges Naoshi to stop hurting people. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10 also reveals how badly Sumi Yusaba wanted to be a maiden of the dream sight to change the hard and fast rules concerning the Yusabas. Yet, she knew that it wouldn't have been possible since she was born with telepathy powers. The dream sequence shifts to another memory, showing Sumi's resolve to save her family, even though it meant the end of her relationship with Naoshi. Although Sumi was firmly convinced that it was the only way, Naoshi found it difficult to grapple with the truth. Shortly after that, the dream sequence switches to Naoshi Yujui outside the Saimori household. He internally breaks down to find out that Sumi has left the mortal world. However, he clings to hope when he discovers that Sumi has a daughter. Through confronting those visions, Miyo asks Sumi whether she has a chance to stop Naoshi. Sumi only smiles as a path opens behind her. Miyo Samori follows the path, which eventually takes her to Kiyoka Kudo under the cherry blossom tree. As they watch the cherry blossom flowers bloom, Miyo regains her consciousness. She walks out of the Yusaba mansion and approaches the tree in real life. Miyo's grandfather, Yoshito, asks her whether Sumi has shown her the way. Miyo says that she has done that indeed. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 10 ends with Miyo Samori awakening her dream sight powers. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 11 begins with Arata Yusaba checking on Kiyoka Kudo in prison. The moment Kiyoka notices Arata, he becomes incredibly furious. He tries to demonstrate his lightning abilities, but surprisingly they don't work. Arata then tells Kiyoka that there's a special barrier that seals supernatural abilities. Meanwhile, Kiyoka wants to know why Arata has sided with Naoshi Yujui and abandoned his duties to protect Miyo. Arata then reminds Kiyoka that everything he does is for the Yusaba family and Miyo. After that, the narrative for My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 11 shifts the focus to Miyo Samori, who witnesses a series of events in her dream. She realizes that those visions will lead him to Kiyoka Kudo. Banking on her visions, Miyo plans to head to the military grounds. Yet before that, she wants to meet Yoshito Goto first. Kiyoka Kudo's Shiki, Kiyo, thinks Goto might not have returned yet. In addition, he fears the gifted communion members could still be there. However, Miyo urges Kiyo to trust her. As Miyo and Kiyo approach the military grounds, they notice several brainwashed members outside the front gate. Thus, Miyo decides to enter through the back gate. She easily enters the grounds exactly how she envisioned in her dreams. Through accessing the grounds through the back door, Miyo Samori meets Yoshito Goto. She's glad to see that Yoshito is doing fine. Likewise, Yoshito is thrilled to see Miyo. Meanwhile, Kiyo observes the aftermath of the battle that has taken place at the training grounds. Yoshito reveals how they had to fight against several brainwashed army forces and grotesqueries. He then assures Miyo that Kiyoka will be fine. Miyo tells Yoshito that she plans to head out with Kiyo the next day to save Kiyoka Kudo. That's why she hopes Yoshito and others will lend her help. Miyo says that she should be able to find Kiyoka with her dream sight ability. Aside from saving Kiyoka, she wants to make Naoshi Yujui understand her mother's feelings, which he couldn't in the past. This way, Miyo thinks that she can stop Naoshi's madness. During the conversation, Kazushi steps outside, Kazushi assisting Miyo as her bodyguard in her rescue operation. Elsewhere, an official reprimands Naoshi since Prince Takahito is still in authority. Naoshi then reminds him that it's their fault for not knowing that the navy was away. When the official gets involved in a heated with Naoshi, the latter's subordinate incinerates him with supernatural abilities. He asks Naoshi how he wants to handle the navy. Naoshi usually says that everything will be fixed once they have Miyo. Meanwhile, Miyo Samori goes to the Imperial Castle to meet Takahito Kudo, who is staying there for the time being. She mentions how she found out about his location from her dreams. However, she doesn't know why Takahito has come to the castle. Kiyoka Kudo asked his father to do something prior to his arrest. He wanted Takahito to take care of Miyo if something happened to him. During their conversation, Miyo Samori finally requests Takahito to help her save her fiancé. Takahito assures Miyo by saying that she can count on him. At the same time, he asks Miyo to rest for a while since she has traversed a long distance to arrive at the castle. Cases Miyo sharing a moment with Kiyoka Kudo's mother, Fuyu. Fuyu reminds Miyo how a woman must always try to fulfill their duties for their husband. Sometimes, a marital relationship can stay without even love. However, she reminds Miyo that she's special because she gets to love and do duties for Kiyoka at the same time. As the night approaches, Miyo gets apprehensive about the next day's endeavors. As such, Kiyo decides to sing a lullaby to her. The Shikigami's melodious voice brings serenity to Miyo's thoughts. As the dawn beacons, Miyo Samori finally heads out to rescue her fiancé with Kazushi and Kiyo. They arrive at the military headquarters where Kiyoka is located. Guided by her dream, Miyo leads everyone to the prison area. Since the entrance to the administrative building is locked, they use one of the windows to get in. As soon as they reach the prison's depths, several guards approach them and showcases Miyo Samori demonstrating her dream sight powers to induce the guards into a terrifying dream. With them fast asleep, Miyo and others continue their search inside the prison cells. Following the path seen in her dreams, Miyo Samori realizes that her husband-to-be must be trapped up ahead. Meanwhile, Naoshi Yujui and Arata Yusaba learn about Miyo and others' arrival, so they start making their move. Elsewhere, at prison headquarters, Kazushi observes a barrier. As he begins to dispel the barrier, a terrifying grotesquerie stops their way. The grotesquerie severely attacks Kiyo and goes for Miyo. This moment, a fire spell incinerates the creature. Miyo Samori realizes that it's none other than Kiyoka Kudo, her fiancé. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 11 showcases a heartwarming reunion between Miyo and Kiyoka, as the former finally confesses to her fiancé how much she loves him. She apologizes for not saying it earlier. Meanwhile, Kiyoka Kudo's Shikigami bids farewell to Miyo since his work is done. Miyo becomes slightly disheartened as Kiyo disappears from her vision. Inside the headquarters, Yoshito Goto and others fight against the brainwashed soldiers and the gifted communion members. Kazushi joins Yoshito and tells him that the rescue operation is successful. Meanwhile, Takahito Kudo also cooperates with Yoshito and other soldiers from the Special Anti-Grotesquerie Unit. He unleashes a powerful ice-type attack against the enemies. Elsewhere, Miyo and Kiyoka reach a hallway where Naoshi and Arata await their arrival. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 11 ends with Naoshi Yujui welcoming the Maiden of the Dream Site.
The episode 12 begins with Naoshi Yujui commending Miyo for awakening her dream sight powers and venturing into his castle. Miyo says that she hasn't come to ensure Naoshi can make his ideal world. Rather, she wants to stop him. Naoshi Yujui realizes that Miyo hasn't learned from the past. Thus, he thinks that Miyo must be punished. Kiyoka Kudo stands in front of Miyo to shield her. Episode 12 then shows a confrontation between Naoshi Yujui and Kiyoka. The former demonstrates his ocular abilities to send a flock of crows at Kiyoka, who wonders whether it's an illusion or reality. Suddenly, he observes Naoshi charging at him out of nowhere with a medium-sized dagger. Kiyoka quickly blocks the blade and goes for a counterattack. However, Naoshi Yuzui keeps up with Kiyoka, anticipating his every move. As Kiyoka Kudo clashes his blade with Naoshi Yuzui, he observes that his enemy has another blade in his other hand. Episode 12 then shows Naoshi slashing Kiyoka's chest with another dagger. Naoshi Yuzui's attack leaves Kiyoka bleeding. However, he soon realizes that it's not an actual wound. Rather, it's another illusion created by Naoshi Yuzui. Kiyoka Kudo cannot believe that his enemy can control others' minds as well. Naoshi Yuzui's attack in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 12 leaves Kiyoka's subconscious mind gasping for breath. Naoshi mentions how the illusion born from Kiyoka's own distorted thoughts will be his end. Meanwhile, Miyo Saimori desperately wants to step in and stop the fight. However, Arata Yusuba stops Miyo by pointing a gun at her. Elsewhere, in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 12, Yoshido Goto and others defeat the brainwashed soldiers and the gifted communion members. Just then, one of his comrades arrives at the location to inform him that their squad has found Mikado's whereabouts. Mikado is confined on the top of the abandoned former official residence. As such, he heads to the location, leaving Takahito and others at the castle. Takahito Kudo tells Yoshido that he must go and carry out his duty. Elsewhere, Kiyoka Kudo fights back the psychological pain with sheer determination. He demonstrates his supernatural abilities to release thunder toward Naoshi Yuzui, who effortlessly evades the attack and charges at Kiyoka with his dagger. As Kiyoka blocks the dagger, he realizes that it's only an illusion. The real dagger is on Naoshi's other hand, which he uses to mildly slash Kiyoka's feet. Naoshi's repeated illusions corner Kiyoka. As such, he changes his plan. He lunges forward to strike Naoshi down. The gifted communion's leader shifts to the other side to plunge the knife down into Kiyoka's back. However, this is exactly what Kiyoka wanted. Anticipating the move, he uses his fire abilities to throw Naoshi off guard. Yet, it's not enough to defeat his enemy, as Naoshi uses a shield to block the flames. Episode 12 then shows Naoshi Yuzui's real strength, as he plunges Kiyoka into a horrifying nightmare. Meanwhile, Miyo Saimori wants to go and help her fiancé. However, Arata doesn't allow her to go. At this moment in My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 12, Miyo Saimori confronts a vision of the future where Arata and Naoshi Yuzui die. On the other side, Kiyoka Kudo is confined to a nightmarish loop where Miyo Saimori repeatedly dies at the hands of a terrifying grotesquerie. What's worse, he can only watch the horror unfold and cannot do anything to protect his fiancée. As Kiyoka Kudo suffers from an unimaginable psychological pain, Miyo Saimori steps in. She demonstrates her powers as the Dreamsight Maiden to change the environment of Kiyoka's hell into a heavenly abode. Interestingly, Arata Yusuba and Naoshi Yuzui are also in the dreamscape with Kiyoka and Miyo. Episode 12 then focuses on Miyo Saimori, who confronts Naoshi Yuzui with a determined will. She wants Naoshi to change his ways and stop inflicting pain on others. Miyo reminds him about his past with her mother, including that she, Sumi, wouldn't have wanted to see Naoshi tread on such a path. Yet, Naoshi Yuzui remains determined to follow his own ideals. He thinks a world without Sumi is a world to be destroyed. At this moment, Miyo slaps Naoshi Yuzui to remind him more about the past he shared with Sumi. However, in response, Naoshi envelopes the dreamscape with darkness. Episode 12, Sumi Saimori's visage descends to the land. Her arrival ushers in light to dispel the darkness pervading the dreamland. Naoshi Yuzui is transfixed by Sumi's visage. Even though he's overjoyed to see her, Sumi's face displays no smile. Sumi doesn't show any emotion because Naoshi Yuzui has hurt her family. Yet, at the same time, he recognizes that he's also her family. That's why she wants the man to stop his evil deeds and join him.
行きましょう。私と一緒に。
However, Naoshi usually mentions how protecting Sumi's smile was everything he cherished in his life. Since Sumi is no longer alive, he wants to destroy the world, which now has no meaning to him. For a while, Sumi doesn't say anything. She breaks her silence by releasing Naoshi from his duty as her protective sword and asking him to join her. However, Naoshi has had enough. He picks up his dagger and plunges it into his chest to break free from the dreamscape. As the dream world collapses, Miyo finds herself trapped in a strange environment, with clocks surrounding her. Miyo then hears Sumi's voice telling her that the gears of a new era have begun to turn. She assures her that everything will be fine. Sumi also commends Miyo for her effort. After regaining consciousness, Miyo Saimori discovers Naoshi Yuzui in an injured state, trying to go after Kiyoka. However, his illusions fail. Arata Yusuba points his gun at Naoshi. Arata fires the bullet at the same time as Naoshi throws his dagger at him. The bullet pierces through Naoshi's chest, while the dagger plunges into Arata's body. Horrified, Miyo goes to check on Arata. Meanwhile, Kiyoka Kudo shouts for a medic. As for Naoshi, he slowly loses his consciousness. In his last moments, Naoshi usually sees Sumi's visage, who extends her hand toward him. Just like their childhood days, Naoshi joins Sumi on a walk. Yet this time, it's the walk to the afterlife. After some time, the medic arrives and takes the injured Arata Yusuba away. On the other hand, Kiyoka confirms Naoshi Yuzui's death. Meanwhile, Miyo Saimori, in a teary voice, questions the existence of the supernatural abilities, as she cannot understand how people can fight for power and hurt others. Even though she could change the future with her ability, she laments that she couldn't protect her mother's wish. Kiyoka Kudo then hugs Miyo and tells her that she has done everything that she could. My Happy Marriage Season 2 Episode 12 ends with Kiyoka and Miyo meeting Yoshito and others outside after the horrific trial.
We're diving deep into the heartfelt and emotional final episode of My Happy Marriage Season 2, Episode 13, titled The Shape of My Happiness. The episode begins with a calm atmosphere, a much-needed breather after the recent chaos. The supernatural threats have been dealt with, and peace seems to be returning. Miyo is seen peeling an orange for Arata while he's resting. Playfully, Arata teases her, saying, "Being hospitalized isn't so bad if you're going to peel oranges for me like this."
に来てみかんを剥いてくれるなら入院も悪くはないかもしれない。
Miyo then asks him seriously, "Did you plan from the beginning to have Naoshi Yuzui shot?" Arata Tsuruki finally opens up. He admits his mistakes honestly and apologizes sincerely to both Miyo and Kiyoka. Miyo shares how the entire situation was traumatic for her. Arata no longer hides behind pride. Instead, he takes responsibility for the pain he caused. This moment serves as a symbolic closure to old wounds, especially between him and Miyo. Miyo then says, "If only I could have used my ability back then, I might have been able to fix things." That moment, Kiyoka arrives. Arata, still teasing, says to him, "You came here to see me, didn't you?"
もしかして俺の見舞いに
勘違いするな。
Kiyoka responds firmly, "Don't misunderstand. I came here to pick up Miyo." As she walks over to Kiyoka and the two prepare to leave. As they are about to depart, Arata jokingly remarks, "You two are going on a date, aren't you?" Miyo smiles and replies, "Yes."
デートですか
The scene shifts to Kiyoka's mother and sister discussing his upcoming wedding. They're talking about preparations, particularly about what dress Miyo should wear. It's a warm, light-hearted moment between them as they share their thoughts. Hazuki gently presents Miyo with a delicate white kimono. "This," she says with a tender smile, "is the white kimono father gave mother when she married into the Kudo family. It's well worn now because I wore it too. And Miyo, I want you to inherit it." Miyo stands frozen for a moment, overwhelmed. Her eyes begin to well up as her voice, trembling with emotion, narrates her thoughts. The outfit my mother wore when she married into the Saimori family, it doesn't exist anymore. So the thought of inheriting something from someone, it never even occurred to me that such a moment could be possible. Unable to hold back her tears, Miyo's emotions overflow. Kiyoka's mother, observing her crying, says dryly, "Crying over a mere piece of clothing? How pathetic." Still, there's no harshness in her tone, and with surprising gentleness, she hands Miyo a handkerchief. "Miyo, thank you." Just then, Hazuki teases with a laugh. "Mother, when you received this same white kimono, father told me, you were so happy you cried buckets, you know." Kiyoka's mother's face turns beet red. She snaps back with a flustered tone. "Be quiet."
嬉しくて大泣きしてたってお
Kiyoka Kudo, a man who has spent most of his life on the battlefield, leading with strength and honor. But now he chooses something far more personal, love over duty. With a calm resolve, he submits his resignation papers.
書いてある通りです。
理由を聞かせてくれ。
おります。
A symbolic act that speaks volumes. He's ready to step away from conflict, to finally live a life not for the empire but for himself and Miyo. But he doesn't leave his responsibilities hanging. In a quiet, respectful gesture, he appoints Gadu as his successor, ensuring the unit he led so fiercely will be in good hands. This decision, it's not just mature, it's deeply heartwarming. It shows that Kiyoka isn't just protecting Miyo from the outside world. He's also building a life with her emotionally, mentally, completely. He's choosing peace. He's choosing her. After their quiet little date, Miyo and Kiyoka return home. But they're not alone. Outside, a sleek black car is already waiting, parked like a silent messenger of fate. Standing beside it is Takakura, the ever-formal envoy from the Imperial Palace. He greets them with courtesy but wastes no time. The Imperial Gifted Communications Bureau is extending an invitation to you, Miyo.
ここについてのご提案で参りました。
He says firmly. He speaks of the chaos that recently unfolded in the capital, the kind of disaster they can't afford to repeat. That's why, he explains, we need individuals with your abilities to serve under Prince Takahito.
あなたの力をTakahito様の下で使っていたい。
Then, turning to Kiyoka, he adds, as Miyo's husband, you're welcome to come to the Imperial Palace as well. A formal offer, and a test of their resolve. Before going, Takakura simply says, take your time. Think it over. And just like that, he's gone. Miyo and Kiyoka are left sitting in silence. Now the choice is theirs. As night blankets the sky, peace settles in their quiet home. Miyo and Kiyoka sit beside each other, the silence between them warm and comforting. After a pause, Kiyoka gently says, I've submitted my resignation. I'm no longer part of the military. Miyo looks at him in surprise. But that's something you've devoted so much time to. Kiyoka smiles softly and replies, because now, I want to spend my time with you. I want a peaceful life with you in it. Her heart swells with emotion. She reaches out and embraces him, whispering, I support your decision truly. Then, after a moment, Kiyoka pulls back slightly and asks her the question that's been on his mind. What about you, Miyo? What do you want to do about the offer from the Imperial Palace this morning? Miyo stays quiet for a heartbeat, then replies with gentle certainty, I don't want to go either. I just want to stay here with you. They hold each other again, more tightly.
共に暮らそう。私たちの家。
Than before. Two souls finally free to love, to live, and to choose peace. The next morning arrives with quiet resolve. Miyo and Kiyoka visit Prince Takahito at the Imperial Palace. As they bow respectfully, the prince greets them calmly, but then he looks at Kiyoka and politely says, Kiyoka, would you mind waiting outside? Kiyoka nods and silently steps away, giving Miyo the space to speak her heart. Prince turns to Miyo, his expression gentle yet serious. So, Miyo, what have you decided about the offer? Taking a breath, Miyo raises her eyes and responds with quiet strength. Thank you for the opportunity, but I've made my decision. I don't wish to join the Gifted Communications Bureau. I simply want to live peacefully with Kiyoka. Prince takes a moment, then smiles with understanding. I respect your decision, Miyo, he says with warmth in his voice. With that, the meeting ends and Miyo rejoins Kiyoka outside. Kiyoka brings Miyo to a quiet, scenic spot. There, he hands her a small gift. Kiyoka gently reaches into his coat and takes out a small box. Inside is a delicate hairpin. I thought this would suit you, he says calmly, offering it to Miyo. She accepts it with a warm smile and a quiet thank you.
刺してください。似合いますか？
Then Miyo pulls out something, a new braided cord. She steps closer, lifts his hair gently, and ties the cord onto Kiyoka's hair. They exchange a look.
新しいく
No big words, just mutual understanding. After the quiet exchange of gifts, they hug each other, holding on to the moment. Then Kiyoka asks gently, Miyo, will you marry me? Miyo pauses, blushing slightly, then nods with a soft smile. Yes.
してほしい
I love you. And with that, the episode closes. Not with fireworks or grand declarations, but with a simple, honest beginning to their new life together. That's all for today's breakdown of My Happy Marriage Season 2, Episode 13. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends who love the series. And hey, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of the season finale? But before I wrap up, I'm going to drop some major spoilers for Season 3, so if you haven't read or watched it yet, this is your warning to click away now. Spoilers ahead. In Season 3, we dive deep into the aftermath of the events of this season. Miyo's relationship with Kiyoka faces some serious challenges, especially with the arrival of new characters that bring even more drama into their lives. There's also a huge revelation about Miyo's past that'll shake everything she thought she knew. And as for Erita, things get way more complicated with his journey as he faces some really dark moments that could change the course of his future. It's an emotional roller coaster, so trust me, you're going to want to keep up. Spoilers end. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and stay tuned for more awesome content.